Okay, I see it's leveled out a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a little brief introduction. That way we get started right on the top of the hour and can have all the time for all the questions and answers, because that is what we have today. It is another hot topic today. I believe it's the last one of the season. And so, Hot Topic's a little different than some of our other sessions we offer. It's an opportunity. We do have a little bit of a prep presentation day due to what's going on out in the field, but we do leave more time for Q&A. That way, if we've missed some things or something's come up just overnight, there's time for you to ask questions. And we have a lot of specialists that are on today to help answer them. So, my name is Monica Jean. I'm a field crops educator based in the Saginaw Bay region, and I am going to be your host today. I hope that you guys are having a good morning so far. There's enough exciting disease stuff going on out in the field. We have a little bit of a prepped hot topic kickoff here.
Okay, yeah, good morning, everybody. So I was just going to give a few sort of updates with respect to disease. This time of year is always pretty exciting because everything's starting to really develop in terms of diseases. So one of the things that we've seen in corn, so not much tar spot, although that's starting to trend up a little bit as things cool off. But given the warm conditions we've had this season and just the movement of spores from down south, we've seen quite a bit of southern rust across the Midwest. So some pretty severely impacted areas of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. And it's hit central and south west Michigan as well. And some of these fields are lit up some of them are lit up pretty severely. If you happen to see it in counties that I don't have colored here, I would love to know about it. If you have check strips out there with your fungicides or are seeing differences or any patterns, I would really also like to know about that so we can sort of summarize and get better understanding of how to manage this disease here in Michigan. We have it in our fungicide trials as well, so that'll be good. We'll be able to look at some products and how things worked out there. So no real management on making sprays now because we're getting very late in the season. I wouldn't generally recommend a spray this late in. But again, if you have a question, by all means, get in contact with me about southern rust. I wanted to mention red crown rot. We don't have this confirmed in Michigan, but I would bet money that it's probably out there. And so part of the challenge is that it looks so much like soybean sudden death syndrome and brown stem rot. The only thing that starts to differentiate it is there's red crown rot symptoms. So down that lower part of the stem will look a little bit red. And then at times we'll see these red fruiting bodies on the stem, but they're not always present. If you think you have this, or you're like, that's a bit weird, I don't remember this or whatever in the field, just grab a sample. If you can't get it to us, within 2 days, put whatever sample that is into a paper bag and just let it dry in your house and then get it to us when you can. That way we can look at it. If you put it in a plastic bag and it molds for too long, it's going to be too hard. The only other trick here in terms of identifying things is that with white mold infection, I think most of you can identify white mold with those sclerotia bodies. That does produce a little bit of reddening on the stem where that white mold is infecting. So don't confuse that. But again, I'd rather get your samples and check for you than to miss things. And here's just a map of where red crown rot's been confirmed. And this is why I'm concerned. So very far north, Indiana and Illinois. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's already across the border. It's soil borne, soil transmitted. So we want to prevent any movement of soil. So if you're buying equipment this winter, make sure it's cleaned off before you bring it to your property. And that goes for weed seeds, nematodes, and other pests. So here's a couple of foliar field level images of red crown rot. I mean, honestly, if I was driving by, I might think that's SDS. And I know my colleagues have been tricked as well. So again, even if you think it's SDS and you want to check it out, get me a sample. I'm more than happy to run it and just verify what is out there. And now is also a really good time to be looking for soybean sudden death syndrome, just as we go. So hit that sort of late maturity stages. That's when it will really pop in the fields a little bit more. So good idea to make a note of where those fields are, where those situations are, so we can plan for resistant varieties in a couple of years' time, and maybe a seed treatment too. Red crown rot, there's not a lot we can do in terms of management at the moment, and that's why I wanted to spend time on this because it's important for us to figure out if it's here and then start some work to look at it. There's a few seed treatments, Saltro Oliva and Ceromax, that are registered, but we need more efficacy data, and we really don't know anything about variety resistance at this point in time. So again, if you think you have it, get us a sample, please, so we can help verify. And it can survive in the soil for many years. Let's switch gears and talk about wheat viruses. So as we think about wheat planting, we want to be thinking about wheat virus management. So a graduate student in my lab, Keely, has done an awesome job at wheat virus sampling. And again, thank you to those people that have participated in this over the last couple of years. Here's some symptoms of wheat streak mosaic virus, barley yellow dwarf virus, and another wheat streak mosaic virus. So those sort of yellowing on the plant, those various symptoms that we see. So here's some data that Keely collected. So on the top line there is 2024. So we've got wheat streak mosaic virus, barley yellow dwarf, and cereal yellow dwarf virus. So wheat streak and barley yellow dwarf were two of the more prevalent viruses. Wheat streak mosaic virus was found in like 50% of samples or about 60, 70% of fields. So it's very prevalent. It was quite prevalent in 24, but even more so in 2025. And the opposite for barley yellow dwarf, a little bit more prevalent in 24, less so in 25. Wheat streak mosaic virus is spread by the wheat leaf curl mite. And so that it can become airborne and move from one field to the other. And so that's the one that we really want to be thinking about in terms of management. And there's nothing we can spray, but what we have to do is try and stop that green bridge. So terminate any volunteer wheat, particularly in neighboring fields. So here's a photo of that. So we've got across the road here, so this is up in the thumb from last year or the year before, but we've got volunteered wheat that was in this field right across the laneway. And then we've got wheat streak mosaic virus right across there. And there's generally a gradient too, so it will be worse right next to the source of inoculum, which would have been this volunteer wheat field and where those wheat curl mites had drifted in en masse. So we really want to break that green bridge, so terminate that volunteer wheat 2 weeks ahead of having our next crop in the ground. We attended a webinar from Kansas a couple of weeks ago, and they were recommending a 30-day wheat-free period to really help manage this disease or this virus. It's doing a lot of damage in Kansas, given the volume of wheat that they have down there. So again, once infected, there are no management options, so we really need to break that green bridge. There are no chemical treatments. There's no miticides or insecticides that will fix things here. We are looking at variety resistance, so we're working with Eric Olsen to try and screen some varieties, see if we can figure out which may be more resistant to the virus. Continuing on with wheat, we're continually getting bunts and smuts or reports of. So it gets a little confusing in terms of like what species is there, and there's a lot of different names for the fungus. But essentially, it's a Talisha species, and what happens is this fungus can survive in the soil as these spores that are shown here on this slide, or they can be on contaminated grain. And so shortly after planting, as that seedling starts to germinate, those spores will germinate and then infect that seedling. And then that will grow up through the plant, and then at flowering, that fungus is going to replace that ovary tissue in that wheat grain, and basically within that that ball that is being produced is millions of these little spores that we have that microscope photo of here. So there's a couple of species that cause it. There's like a couple that cause stinking smut, or also known as common bunt. The problem there is that it produces a fishy odor in that grain, and so you get a reject from that. There's also dwarf bunt, and for a while, I'm not too sure where it's at now, but there are some export restrictions sometimes with dwarf bunt. There was some deal with China some years ago. So it's statewide. This year we've heard reports in the northwest part of the state, but we've had reports in the thumb and southeast. This used to be a huge problem before we had good seed treatments. Now that we have good seed treatments, the problem has really been significantly reduced. However, we don't have a lot of good recent seed treatment studies. That said, it's night and day compared to where we were 60 years ago. This is really just what I've just talked about. So I guess the big issue is here, it can contaminate soil, right? As well as contaminating grain, it can contaminate soil. So we can control it with the use of a seed treatment, but that has to be professionally treated to ensure good coverage of the seed. So dumping a treatment in the seed box is not going to be good enough. You're not going to get good coverage. In terms of the treatments too, what we know is that the triazole or DMI chemistry seem to be the ones that are doing the heavy lifting, and difenoconazole seems to be the more important one there to maintain a little bit longer activity on that seedling. Um, so I just said seed treatment works, and that's great, but don't go using a seed lot that is infected. The seed treatment will help, but it probably won't eliminate infection. So please don't go using infested seed as a seed source. And this is a reason that you should be using certified seed because that at least has been scouted and checked that it's not visibly present. Again, doesn't necessarily rule it out 100%, but certainly greatly reduces the risk of this. So certified seed and then seed treatment to help manage this one. And I know people are thinking, well, I'll save some money. I'll just plant some grain that I have and I won't worry about a seed treatment. Well, that's fine, but just this is a potential consequence of that. So I just want you to be very aware of this issue.
All right, thank you so much, Marty. That was a great update on diseases out in the field right now that our farmers might be seeing or struggling with. And I think with that, we are into the Q&A. So go ahead, stop sharing here. That way you can see all of our faces. If people can go ahead, if specialists are on, if you can go ahead and turn your video on, it just pops up at the top of the screen for folks. Thank you. We've had quite a few questions already put into the chat box, although I see Clay has his hand raised, and that's hard for me to ignore. Clay, what do you have for a question? Oh, I think it was an accident. Sorry, Clay, for calling you out there.
Nope. I'm driving and
Oh,
had to
okay.
take the boot off.
Be safe, please.
I understand the University of California, Davis has come up with a wheat variety that can effectively fix their own nitrogen. And I was wondering, what's the range of nitrogen that it can fix? What's the consequences of fixing nitrogen in the wheat? Are you going to get more lodging, less lodging? Are you going to get a taller plant? You're going to get better yield. And side question would be, if they can do it in wheat, can they do that in corn?
I see Dennis Pennington's on, so I'm gonna pick on Dennis here. Dennis,
Yeah,
oh good, you unmuted yourself.
yeah, I'm driving as well, Clay. So I am not familiar with the variety. I know there's been talk about breeding the ability to fix nitrogen into these. That's been a goal for a long time. It's also a goal for corn, but you got a grass crop. It's biologically different than like soybeans that have the cyst nematode or the not the cyst nematode, the nodules that fix nitrogen. So I will have to punt on that one. Let me do some research and I will get back to you because I honestly I can't answer those questions you had. They're great questions. So I'm just not familiar with the variety that they've released. How much nitrogen it can fix if it does cause any other problems. Sorry about that.
No, I don't know if they've released it. It was published, I think, yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, it sounds
Oh,
like it was a greenhouse study or proof of concept study because
Hmm.
the Google tells me that.
Which I will say the bacteria that they have like to get that to work may be very different once you get it out in the field. So if that can actually create that symbiotic relationship with the bacteria to the root system in order to nodulate and work. So it would be very important that they go and do that out in a farm field now.
They've
So
created a biofilm, it says, but it looks
okay.
like it's probably lab or greenhouse based.
Okay. So maybe we don't have anything that's available to go to the field yet.
Right.
Clay, I love the questions you come up with though every week. Thank you for that good head scratcher.
They used
Um,
Yep.
CRISPR. Everything is using CRISPR.
CRISPR.
So, see, I learned something this morning by the Google.
Steve did find the article and put it into the chat box if anyone else on here is interested in reading about this. So thank you, Steve, for grabbing that. All right, let's get into the questions that got submitted. Sorry about like Chris had submitted a while ago and I got too excited with the hand raise. I apologize for that. All right, water hemp control and dry beans. It looks like he's asking, I don't know if we've got Scott. I think Jenna was trying to look up this question. What did you
I
find, Jenna?
I got a hold of both Scott and Christy this morning.
Oh, awesome.
So, in response to this, Scott says that he wouldn't be super optimistic because we have HPPD carryover issues from corn already. And he thinks there'd have to be additional screening. Christy says that we do not have any tolerances for contro in dry beans. Additionally, it's going to be similar in control to many of our group 15 herbicides and soybeans. So it would be something that we'd have to look into before that would even be an option.
Okay, so that's not sounding favorable, unfortunately, but I'm happy to get a response back. Thank you, Jenna, for doing that. Next question's for Jeff on the Farmer's Almanac. It says they've given a preliminary winter prediction that the Great Lakes region will be very cold and snowy. I don't like that. Can you tell us that they're wrong, please, Jeff?
Well, I could. Whether there's any confidence or not is another question. But and I did see that. And as I mentioned earlier here during the weather segment, we do have some weak La Nina conditions. And I guess there's one piece of this that maybe is consistent. We typically see above normal snowfall during La Nina winters. But that said, I don't see also a signal that would lead to the below normal, or the colder than normal. That one, at least in terms of the official outlooks, is not there yet. At least not yet, and hasn't been. But maybe above normal or wetter than normal conditions during the upcoming winter. We'll see. I think right now that's going way out on the line on the limb too, and well, I know the almanac has been going for a long, long time. We'll see how they do, but that's a really tough
Okay.
forecast to do. But right now the only link I would say was maybe wetter than normal, maybe a little bit above normal snowfall at this point, and that could change though between now
Okay.
and December.
So between the almanac or magic 8 ball, we could still predict what's going to happen, is what I'm
That's
understanding.
that's
Okay.
that's right.
Sounds great. I don't mind using the magic 8 ball. It's how I make a lot of my farming decisions. So thank you. Thank you, Jeff. All right, moving in then. We have a question. I think Erin Hill is on. I'm hoping she's still on. Awesome. There's a question in here about water hemp developing a resistance to 2,4-D products, that the wheat burn down control has been underwhelming. I thought, Erin, if you want to do a plug-in for your screening, they could submit some samples, right? But also, what have we been seeing from the samples that have been submitted?
That's correct. I did put a link in the chat a little bit ago about how to get your wheats tested. There's definitely been more interest in 2,4-D resistance in water hemp, but thus far there's only been one confirmed case to that. So out of maybe 5 samples that got submitted last year with that suspicion, there was only one that was confirmed. So if you do fall in that category where you're having trouble controlling it, I encourage you to try and collect some seed. Water hemp is a little bit tricky because there are male plants with no seed and female plants that do have the seed. So make sure if you are going to send in a sample that you're checking for that shiny black little seeds. They're about the size of a head of a pin, before you submit those in for screening, and then we can check it out for you. We really like to have those samples in by mid-November. So think about opening day for deer season. You can have those samples in by then we can get you some timely results for that water hemp or whatever else you're interested in.
Yeah, and Jason, in your area, I feel very confident saying both Nicole and Christine would be happy to go out and collect samples too if there's some fields that you're concerned about. Local educators would be happy to facilitate sampling and getting it down to Aaron as well. So, all right, moving on to a Japanese beetle question on soybean. Chris, I see you did a little response. Could you summarize quickly, please?
Yes. So people were saying that they noticed Japanese beetle on soy and some feeding. They would have emerged in July at some point. There's already little grubs under the soil. So the ones that are left now, it's end of the season for them. They're, mating while they can and laying whatever eggs that they can. And the damage is usually trivial, except sometimes on edges where the female's she's putting out a pheromone and gathering everybody kind of sometimes on one in one place. So you'll get a few plants kind of where they sit and feed and kind of do more damage. In addition to Japanese beetle, there's probably 10 other things that are causing defoliation out there. Um, there's bean leaf beetle, a bunch of caterpillars, but by this time of the year, unless they're damaging pods, and Japanese beetle doesn't go for pods, but bean leaf beetle will, there would be no reason to spray. Things are probably winding down and are pretty much done. So they've already laid their eggs for next year, essentially.
Okay. Would this be a good time to pull plants if you have any concerns about population or anything like that?
And it can a time to do what?
To like pull plants, look in the soil and see how many little grubs are in there or do anything like that? If
I don't,
people are
I think the
worried.
average person probably wouldn't see them.
Okay.
They're pretty small. In your lawn, like you would have put your lawn care products, you start to put those on what, end of July, I think is so in a field, a lot of times they're not, I don't think they're actually laying eggs necessarily in that soybean field to go into the margins. They like grassy kinds of things. So it's that ditch bank or a lawn that's nearby or the field margin or something. That's where probably you would find uh, grubs. And they're probably few and far between. The adults kind of congregate, so you see them very readily, but in the soil, they'd be spread out, feeding on roots all over the place.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. Let's move on. It looks like Kim, I think this probably would be your question. Will it be safe to plant alfalfa after rye, down to rye putting a serum to kill weeds? So it looks like if you spray for some weeds, is it safe to plant alfalfa after rye?
The way I am interpreting that question is that it may be about the allelopathy from the rye. Um, at least that's the way I'm going to answer it.
Sounds good.
That yes, it is to plant. It is safe to plant alfalfa after rye. You can expect that allelopathy uh, to cause a huge problem. But the main problem with planting things after rye isn't so much about chemicals it puts out. It's more about the fact that the rye residue ties up all the nitrogen in the soil. So that's a case where a little bit of starter nitrogen fertilizer might be helpful to get your alfalfa going. But the bigger problem I see with that question is timing, because the end our alfalfa window is closing in 2025, if that is part of the question. If you are in the northern part of the state, your window is already closed. And down here in mid to southern alfalfa, we don't like to, southern Michigan, we don't like to plant alfalfa after Labor Day. So, reason for that is that alfalfa seedlings need at least 6 weeks of good growing weather before you get a killing freeze, because they are more sensitive to cold temperatures when they're tiny, and you'll kill them if you have an early freeze down to 26 degrees. So, if you're thinking of planting now, you have a couple days to get it done in this area. But if you'd miss that, I'd wait till spring and go for our spring planting window of April and May.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the very holistic answer, Kim. Much appreciated. All right. So the next thing we have, I think I see Eric Anderson's on. So between Eric and maybe Aaron Hill, because I don't see Aaron Burns on. We've got a soybean question here about what is the ideal time to spray soybeans with glyphosate as a harvest aid mostly grasses out in this field that the farmer's concerned about. Oh,
I don't know if Eric has a good answer to that. I do not have a good answer to that without looking up some more information.
okay. Eric, are you
Yeah,
available? Awesome.
just driving, but so we just put an article together on harvest aid, desiccating soybeans. So that actually should be coming out today. Um, we did not focus on glyphosate. So primarily, glyphosate is not going to help with Roundup Ready soybeans. Um, but as far as the timing, uh, really the only issue there is your pre-harvest interval. So check the label on the glyphosate product that you're using. On some of those desiccants, the harvest window is 2 weeks out. Some of them are 0, 3 days. So check the label on it.
Check the label. I don't know if you had anything else to say at the end there, Eric. It cut out a little bit. Just make sure I
Oh,
didn't miss
sorry.
anything.
Nope, that
Okay.
was it.
Okay, awesome. Just thank you so much. All right, so let's move on. It looks like there's been some information pasted in about the CRISPR technology. Thanks, Steve, for giving. And it looks like Jenna pasted some stuff in there. So if you're wondering about um, that wheat, nitrogen stuff we were talking about there, the new plant, people have put things in the chat about it if you'd like to read about it. There's another question here about how good is the EPA's pesticide app for label mitigation, Palm? Anyone used it? Do we have anyone on here that's got some experience with using Palm? I gotta say, if none of
No,
us
it
have.
it just got released like
Okay,
I think this month. And I teach the pesticide class. Clearly, I have not used it, and just glancing at it, it just looks complicated. So I don't
okay,
know.
okay. I see your response here too. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Um, I've not messed with it at all. I don't see anyone saying anything else either. So,
since they just
we'll,
released it, I mean, if anyone's going
yeah,
to look at it, it's probably going to be over the winter, right? And not right now. So,
that
yeah,
feels,
we'll see.
yep, sounds good. Okay, another question. Is there any new chemistry coming out to control water hemp in any crop? Water hemp is popping up in fields all over. Anybody has anything? Again, I'm sorry, we don't have Christy Sprague's not on this morning or Aaron
Yeah,
Burns.
she's the
Sowing.
best person. She's the best person to answer that because they would be the ones doing research on any new chemistry. So sorry, we don't have a better answer right now.
If you want to directly message like Steve or myself with your email address, we would be happy to get you in contact with Christy Sprague in order to help you out with your question there. I'm not aware of anything new, but she definitely would be the right person to talk to.
Yeah.
It looks like, oh, sorry, go ahead,
No, I
Steve.
was just gonna say, I believe that is true, Monica. It's something they're actively working on. There's not any new chemistry, but again, Christy's that subject matter expert. We did have this as our focus topic for the April 24th virtual breakfast. So I'm gonna see if I can drop that link into the chat, and maybe there'll be some information in there that can help out with that question.
All right. And then Lyndon went ahead and shared his email address. Lyndon is our irrigation specialist. Do you want to just go ahead, Lyndon, and if you've got
Sure,
service here, yeah, give us a little update?
sure. If you can hear me, it's an important time of the year. We don't want to short corn and soybeans on water for finishing up. Corn, we get light test weight. Soybeans, well, those last few beads and the last most immature pods end up being BBs if we run out of water. But on the other hand, this is the time of the year we should be getting some rainfall. And when you look across both Indiana and Michigan, we have areas that have ample rainfall, in some cases too much, and areas that haven't had anything for decent rainfall since July. So it's sort of the haves and have nots. Do a good job of irrigation scheduling. Now's the time that you can usually save an inch of water if you're right on top of things, or make the mistake and cost you some yield. If you have irrigation, don't overlook the opportunity to water in your cover crop seed and germinate it so that we get the most out of that and as soon as we can, rather than having the loss of the population or a less than optimum cover crop that's there. And then last but not least, if you're one of those people that have been calling me about, I'm going to put in irrigation this year, it's not dependable when the rainfall is going to come. Now's the time to get started. I know it sounds early, but getting all of the power companies and the piping and the bids on the irrigation and everything, now's the time. And September is usually the lowest total cost with all of the incentive programs and everything to add irrigation. So you're thinking about irrigation for another year, get started. Be glad to help you. There's a good bulletin in the chat about ending the season's irrigation and a good bulletin out there about sort of a checklist for irrigation planning. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lyndon, for popping in for an update. We also do have a couple podcasts from the irrigation team too, a checklist for getting prepared and kind of walking through the process if you're interested in irrigation. Thank you, Chris, for finding the link to looking up your credits. If you guys wanted to know where your credits are for your RUP license, Chris Devanzo did find the link. It's kind of long, but it is in the chat box. I'll make sure to post it with the notes on the podcast as well for this
It's always a little
recording.
bit behind. So when you look it up, you
Yes.
think you had 10 credits or something, maybe 7 are in there. You got to give it some weeks for people to catch up.
Yes, yeah. So, and that's why we say to keep record of your credits. So, okay, that is all the questions I'm seeing at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and ask if there's any other specialists on here that haven't had a moment to give an update. Please, this is a good time to go ahead and hear from you. Kind of like what Lyndon just did there. Is there any other specialists on we haven't heard from, or one we have, but they haven't been able to give a little update on their specialty? Dennis,
Monica, this is Dennis.
yeah, go ahead.
Could you save the chat and send that to me? I want to look up that article that they were discussing about the
Yeah.
CRISPR and the nitrogen and the wheat.
Yeah, I can definitely. I did already copy it actually because Steve's been doing a good job with links, and so I put it in a
Okay,
Word doc already. I'll
thank
definitely
you.
send that your way. No problem. Um, Anybody else with any
So,
questions or
M
updates? Yeah.
Monica, Trey had a question about how to manage cover crops, which could be alternative hosts for wheat diseases. There's probably not been a lot of work done there. So with the smuts and bunts, there's potential for those to infect other grass species, but from the reading that I've done, naturally that doesn't tend to occur. So the species that affect wheat generally just affect wheat. With the viruses, they probably have a little bit more of a wider host range. So yeah, that could be a source of inoculum. In a mixed cover crop, I guess there's going to be less reservoir than a full field of wheat that has been developing viral load over time. So I guess mixed messages from me, but yeah, there's potential for that. If you have grass species in those cover crops affecting your wheat crop, so just something to consider, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for that. Um, great consideration.
So,
Eric, I saw you
Monica,
unmuted.
I
Yes.
just had a follow-up question actually tied into what Marty was just sharing. So, Marty, you were talking about, some diseases that can impact the seed. So, if a farmer has, I know this is a somewhat common practice. If I've got maybe a load that was rejected, or I've got some sketchy wheat, and just plant that out as a cover crop. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that? Is that a good idea, or is it just not worth it?
Sure. So it depends why it got rejected. So if it got rejected for smuts and bunts, and you're spreading that inoculum and that infested seed back into fields, then that's probably not a great move unless you just plan to never grow wheat in that field, I guess. It's probably the short answer.
Okay, and there is another one that popped up there about cereal rye if it's a host for cephalosporium in wheat. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, cephalosporium. I'm just having a quick
Awesome.
look. Probably. Yeah, I think so. Winter cereals, especially winter wheat, and that's a quick Google search. So I'd rather do an actual look at the literature and not trust Google, but um, possibly. I mean, it's also about how good a host it is too, right? And what other rotation you're going to have. Cereal rye and then straight back to wheat, or you're going to have some other rotation in there. So I think you've got to look at all those pieces together.
Hey, awesome. Maybe it looks like our cover crop team needs to do some digging with you guys and to host or maybe even some research projects. That sounds very interesting. Thank you so much. Um, it looks like we've got a question here about some hail damage. My corn got hit by hail when it was in the fourth leaf stage. Could that have anything to do with the different sizes of ears in the field? Um, do we have anyone on that? I don't think I saw Manny was on. Otherwise, I would have.
Manny was on initially, but he
Oh,
had to
okay.
go teach or something. So
Yeah, yep. It is that time of the year. Anybody else think that they can answer that?
Thank you, sir.
All
I don't know that
right.
I can answer that, but I will say that at least down here, we're seeing a lot of poor pollination. So
Yes.
I would, I don't know, getting hit with hail at fourth leaf having an effect on the cob, maybe, but I would say it's probably more likely due to something that occurred during pollination.
Yeah, we have some fields that look worse than others. So definitely we have some pollination stuff up here in the central Michigan area as well. Okay. I think we are right at 7:59 and we've got some questions about points here we can kind of help answer in the chat box, but otherwise I think we have tied up for this hot topic. Steve, did you want to pop up the points again
Yeah,
or okay.
I'll go ahead and drop
Um
that in the chat.
thank
And then
you.
again, if you missed that link, feel free to email me, or I'll put my email in the chat too. And
Okay.
we'll get you squared away. I know that's a big draw to the virtual breakfast series. We want to make sure that you get the points that you earned. But that information's in the chat. But good
Okay.
job, everybody. Great hot topic session. And yeah, in lieu of any other questions, we'll take it home, Monica.
Awesome. So just
Yeah.
want to thank everyone, especially Marty, for prepping some points this morning on diseases. Much appreciated. Great weather report. And this wouldn't be a successful program if all of you didn't get on. So thank you everyone for getting on today. And we can stay on Steve and I can sit for a couple seconds here just so you can get the link. Otherwise, we have wrapped up another virtual breakfast session. Thanks for getting on.